So we've had a couple of storm days now, and I thought that for those who are going away or those who would like to get an early start on the rest of your assignment, I'd do some video recordings of the lessons I plan to cover in class. They're not going to be as exciting because, of course, we can't talk or ask questions back and forth, but at least they'll give you an idea of the material. So far this unit, we focused on matter that makes life possible. We looked at cells, their organelles, and the molecules they require. In Chapter 2, we looked at macromolecules, the cell membrane, and transport across the cell membrane. This chapter completes the unit by concentrating on energy, the other thing that makes life possible. Every cell must have it to function and stay alive. We're going to look at where the energy comes from and how our cells store and release it. So as the picture suggests, we all depend on energy from the sun in order to exist. This is a graphic from your textbook. It shows the hierarchy of energy in living things. As we remember from earlier sections, all organisms are composed of cells. They all need food to provide the energy and matter they need for growth and reproduction and other activities they carry out. You probably remember from junior high talking about the food chain and possibly about autotrophs and heterotrophs. Well, they have other names as well. So autotrophs are also known as producers or photosynthesizers. They obtain energy directly from the sun, so they have the ability to harvest the energy from the sun and they use it to produce their own food. Heterotrophs, or consumers, must obtain their food and energy by eating other organisms, be it plants or animals or other things. More specifically, when we talk about the heterotrophs, there are herbivores, which eat only plants, carnivores, which eat only meat, in other words, other animals, and omnivores, which eat both plants and animals. So we would be considered omnivores. Decomposers, like the name suggests, are bacteria and fungi that break down or decompose dead organisms in organic waste. So they recycle carbon compounds, so they keep the carbon cycle going. The law of conservation of energy states that energy can neither be created or destroyed, but simply converted from one form to another. So as you go down, if you're looking over here at the graphic, as you go down, the photosynthesizers are going to have the most energy that they trap from the sun. With each level, so if a herbivore eats that photosynthesizer, like a plant, then some of that energy is going to be what we say is lost, but it'll be given off as heat. Some of it may be lost in other forms as well. So the law is just saying that energy is transferred from one organism to the next, but some is given off at each level as heat, sound, or some other form. This one is a slide that just shows the carbon cycle and how cellular respiration and photosynthesis are involved in helping to keep recycling carbon. They are considered two major energy transformations, and they're essential for life on Earth. So this is just to give you an overview, and then we'll get into each one more specifically. In photosynthesis, light energy from the sun is used to transform carbon dioxide and water into energy-rich food molecules. So that's why they take in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out and why we need to water them. So they take in the water from their roots and the carbon dioxide from through their what they call stomata, the little breathing holes on their leaves, and they're able to convert them into food molecules. This is the equation for photosynthesis. It says carbon dioxide plus water plus energy from the sun gives glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration, on the other hand, it's almost like the opposite, but it's not the exact opposite because we don't give energy back to the sun. The energy is in different forms. Okay, so in cellular respiration, energy is released. So instead of being stored into food molecules, it's released from food molecules through oxidation reactions, which uses oxygen, and it's stored in the bonds of ATP. ATP is a molecule that temporarily stores the energy, and it acts like a currency, so like money in the bank for the cells to access. If you look at the equation for cell respiration, you could really take the reactants and switch them to the other side, and the products and switch them to the opposite side. If you switch both sides, then the equation looks like photosynthesis. That's not very clear. What I'm trying to say is that the products of photosynthesis, which are glucose and oxygen, are actually the reactants for cell respiration. So if you remember from chemistry, the reactants are always on the left side of the equation, and the products are on the right. So in this case, instead of energy being from the sun or going to the sun, this energy is going to be put into ATP molecules. Why ATP? Well, this is what it looks like. And no, I don't expect you to draw it, but it's called adenosine triphosphate. So adenosine is this molecule up here. Okay, it's actually a nucleotide with a couple of extra phosphates on it. So we have adenosine, the base, sugar part is ribose. It has phosphate group like a normal nucleotide, but it has 2 extra phosphates on it. So that means it has 1, 2, 3 phosphate groups. The thing about ATP is when, if you look over here at the blue screen, when, oops, I need the mouse. I forgot. Okay, here's ATP. When that high energy bond in that third phosphate group, holding the third phosphate group on, is broken, it releases a lot of energy. And that energy is what helps to power other reactions in the cell. So because it's fairly easy to break and releases the energy when the cells need it, it's a very useful molecule to be the energy currency of the cell. The removal of a phosphate group is called dephosphorylation, so they call it dephosphorylation reaction. And it's just showing down here it's ATP plus ADP. Sorry, ATP, if you break it down, gives you ADP, and it should have a plus PI for the phosphate group. So if you were here right now, I'd ask you what you think ADP stands for. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. The phosphate group is removed, so you end up with adenosine diphosphate. So the characteristics that make it so useful: ATP is a simple compound. It has high energy, loosely held phosphate bond, which is easily removed to release energy when it's needed by the cell. And it's recycled easily. So when another reaction happens that releases energy, then it can be coupled to the phosphorylation or adding of phosphate to ADP. Okay, so ADP plus PI, the phosphate group, gives you ATP. Here's a neat little fact over here. In an average human at rest, ADP to ATP occurs so often that there's about 40 kilograms of ATP produced a day. So why don't we gain that much weight? It keeps being recycled and reused. So there's quite a turnover of ATP molecules. Okay, we're going to get into photosynthesis. So I think what I'll do is stop there and we'll do another video section.